And so in the three sort of categories that I actually saw in this, or that I was thinking about doing this in, the first of the categories was a print portfolio. I still believe that that's absolutely critical. The second was social media, website, electronic. That was the second part that I thought was also critical in this. But the last part about this that I think is absolutely critical for you guys, and in many ways, in some ways, possibly the most important part of this class, and that is the business aspect of this class. It's really dealing with the reality that you guys are getting ready to face. How many of you guys, most of you guys are, who's graduating within the next year? Yeah, so like all of you guys are heading out there. So having some strategies about how to best do that are sort of the last part that I want to get to in this. So when 3 or 4 years ago, I actually wrote a 5-week workshop that was called Freelance Business for Photography. And at the time, the chair of our department then asked me if I would incorporate that content into this class. That's why I ended up in this. That's how I inherited this class. So that's kind of the road that we're going to actually go down now. So how many people in this room have taken the freelance business and whatever the hell they call it? Hold your hand up high. Good. How did it go for you?
I've heard like really mixed reviews based on that.
That's what I hear. Apparently it's all depends on who you have.
Yeah.
It's like this, but way easier. It's
Oh.
like, I like this class because it's more geared towards photographers.
Well, and that's where we're going here. The reason I bring that up is because from what I understand about that class, even in its best iteration, is that it's a very generalized version of it, because they have to deal with people from every, they have to deal with the music department and the film department, and it's like all over the place. So what we are going to go into in this class is going to be hyper specific to photography. Now, that being said, there are many elements of this that apply to a fine art photographer as well as a commercial photographer, but there are things specific to this class that will probably be unique for commercial photographers, because we are going to actually get into doing a real serious estimating and bidding issue in this class based on real commercial photography. That's a different experience than most fine art people will have. However, the general part of this, the strategies, the other things that we're going to talk about in this class would apply to any photography. So just to sort of make that part clarified. What is the single most important thing for your business? That's a pretty simple question. Say what? Money. Other people. Is it your work?
A balance between the two.
Say what?
Like what you want it to be about is your work, but what it's actually about is the money, and I think you have to find a happy medium.
Okay. Other people, what are you feeling about that? Does that sound right?
Yeah, like realistically, it should be your work. Yeah, in an ideal world, but that's not always how.
It's not even close. It's not even close. It's not even close. Kelsey hit the nail right on the head. It is about the money, period. It is about the money. It is about the money. It is about the money. Why do I say that? Because the truth of it is, this is the reality that you're facing. If you cannot make a living doing what you do, you won't do it. I mean, it's just that simple. Unless you've got somebody who's got a lot of money, mom and dad, some significant other, some, I don't know, you win the lottery, something like that, whatever, photography will become your hobby. Now, I've talked to a number of you guys outside of this class, and you've heard me have this conversation before, and you're hearing it again. It's just the mantra. They asked Stephen Meisel once what was the most important thing in his career, and he said, oh, easily the money. And this is after he'd made millions. He was absolutely blunt about it, whatever. So anyway, we are going to focus at least on this part of the class about that. Now, some of the things in this lecture that we're going to go through right here, this is all on our website, a good content, a good part about this. We're going to look at our website in just a second. Some of this we've already got a good jump on. So I'm going to go through this part relatively quickly because the part that I'm going to talk about right here is actually stuff that we've already done in this class. So in terms of thinking about setting yourself up for a successful photography business, it all starts with your branding statement. It starts with really defining yourself. However, in addition to this, you need to consider setting goals for yourself in this. Now, the way I tend to think about doing goals is I work in increments of time. So I start with a 1-year goal, I have a 5-year goal, and I have a 10-year goal. So let me ask you guys, where do you want to be in 10 years? Realistically. Be aspirational. Don't you all want to be rich and famous? Don't you all want to be doing the photography of your dreams?
I want to be rich and famous and still work for myself.
Fine, and still have a free, but there are realistic things that you can say about where you see yourself in 10 years, right? You guys are 21, 22, something like that, whatever age, it doesn't matter, whatever. But in that, so you're in your early 20s, in your early 30s, that's where you sort of want to be, right? And that's great. And that should be a goal that you actually have. But now we need to cut that in half. So where do you want to be in 5 years, knowing that that's the 10-year goal? So in 5 years, do you still want to be in Chicago? No, Maddie, that's a good question for
I
you.
wanna be in Chicago right now.
You don't want to be in Chicago in your 1-year plan. That's going to be no, but because that part matters here. Where do you see yourself? 10 years is too far out. 10 years is the dream. 5 years starts to become something somewhat realistic. It's not something that you can do something about immediately today, but that is the okay. What I really want to be doing is I don't want to be assisting anybody anymore. I want to have my own photography business established in 5 years. I want to be, or at least half of my income I want to actually have coming from work that I'm shooting, not work that where I'm schlepping gear for somebody else, right? So then that sets your 5-year goal. And then you take it down to your 1-year goal. And your 1-year goal is the thing that you can actually manage right now. What can you do in the next year that will get you to that place, your 5-year goal? Does that sort of make sense? So nobody ever wants to do these exercises. Everybody hears this shit and they go, right, sure, verse or whatever. Guys, you've got to write this shit down. You've got to write it down. You've got to plan it out, because otherwise you're just winging it. You're just hoping something bumps into you, or you bump into something, and that is just, you're throwing the dice. That's the lottery. That's not a career. So again, it starts with the dream, the vision. Break it in half, bring it down to a 1-year plan, and then at the 1-year plan, which is what you really, really, really need to focus on, what are you going to do this week to get to the 1-year plan? What are you going to shoot this week? What is the 1-year plan? Bennett, what's your 1-year plan? Where do you want to be in 1 year from now?
God, hopefully 1 year from now, I plan on ideally being still working as a photographer and not as an assistant at the studio that I'm currently at, and saving money, paying off my loans, and building up my own reservoir of gear to prepare myself to freelance eventually.
To get into where you're hoping to be in 5 years.
Yeah.
And in the 5-year thing, you want to be fully freelance on your own, shooting as much as you possibly can, whatever. And the 10-year plan, you want to be making it, right? So no, that's exactly what I'm asking all of you guys to do. So for me, 10-year plans first, 5-year plan second, 1-year plan realistic, and then every year you need to revisit that 1-year plan and ask yourself, a year from today, where am I on my journey to that 5-year plan? Did I get sidetracked? Did I get lost? Did I all of a sudden get seduced by the money? You know, Bennett, did all of a sudden, Aldi come to you and say, we're going to give you $100,000 to be our lead photographer, will you stay?
They won't do that.
You never know, you never know. Anyway, all I'm saying is that every year you've got to revisit the 1-year plan. So I'm just putting that part out here. The next thing that is on my list that is an absolute must is to build your portfolio. That's what we've been working on this entire time. The next thing down here is network like crazy. How many people in this room went to the Paul Elledge lecture? perfect networking opportunity. It was actually here at Columbia. It was sponsored by APA. There was a huge collection of photographers here, people that you could have met to possibly get a job as an assistant, to possibly get a job as a digital tech. A perfect opportunity, free, because you are going here as a student at Columbia College. You got to take advantage of all of those situations. You just have to. People hire their friends. If I could tell you one thing about getting hired, what I can tell you is this. Don't worry about your portfolio as much as you need to worry about making friends with people who are in a position to hire you. And it's that simple. So, anybody in this room have any idea who Michael Thompson is? Michael Thompson was the lead photographer for Allure magazine for years, and he was that because before he was that, he was Irving Penn's assistant. Irving Penn, who was shooting for Vogue, was only working with Grace Coddington. Grace Coddington's assistant got promoted when Condé Nast decided to create Allure magazine. Grace Coddington's assistant got promoted to creative director, and the person that she'd been hanging out with for years at Irving Penn's studio was Michael Thompson. So guess who she hires to be the lead photographer for Allure? Michael Thompson. Stephen Klein. Who in this room has heard of Stephen Klein? Who in this room has heard of Salve Sudsbro? Both of them Nick Knight's assistants. Both of them worked for Vogue because they worked for Nick Knight and Nick Knight worked for Vogue. It's just how this game is played, guys. It's a huge, huge part about who you know, and that's all comes from networking. So it's got to be on your radar. You've got to think about it like that. Okay, we've also talked about figuring out who your audience is, what your advantage is, your marketing plan. We've talked about all of these things so far. I love this line. Is your website as great as you are? Is it? Again, we're working on all that part. So that's just the preamble of all of this part. But as we start to get down to the real nitty-gritty in here, what I want to talk about in this class primarily today is trying to figure out what you should charge. So I'm going to bring on some lights. We're still going to do some stuff up on screen, but I'm going to show you this in just a second. So how much should you charge, guys? Does anybody have any clue about that? So I want to hire one of you guys to do a photograph for me. What would you charge me? No idea, right?
Depends on a lot of variables.
It does. It depends on a huge number of variables. So, but we're going to start with the base one. What does it cost you guys to live for a year? I guess the bigger question is, do you know? Do you know?
Not, I mean, you can estimate, but we did stuff like that in self-management and freelancing too. Like we had to make a whole estimate of like essentially our
And
whole life.
guess what? You're going to have to do that in this class as well.
Love it.
Yeah. But at least did they give you a calculator to help you do it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a calculator to help you do that. But when we talk about this, you talk about, so when I say to you, what does it cost you to live for a year? What's your rent? You don't have to tell me your rent. Do you know your rent? Yeah, okay. What's your cell phone bill a month? Do you know how much that is? Don't say too much. You've got to know. What is your food budget a month? What do you spend on food? What do you spend? What's your bar tab a month? Wait. Wait. But for the people in here who have cars, what does it cost you to maintain your car a year? What's your gas cost? What's your insurance cost? For those of you who don't, what's your Uber bill? What's your bus pass cost? Do we have any idea about any of this? You've got to know those numbers. You have got to come up with that figure. So if you go and look on our website, again, we're going to skip ahead because this was really supposed to be coming next week and not this week, but I'm going to point it out to you anyway. I'm not going to change the due dates on any of this stuff. I'm going to leave them exactly as they are because I don't need to confuse anybody anymore. So this will simply give you guys a bit of a head start on that. But if you take a look in Session 9, if you've got a computer open and you want to go here and look at this with me, that would be great. You can actually even start this process and go to the resources under Session 9. And go through. There's a bunch of reading in here that I would ask you to actually look through. Specifically, the breaking into commercial photography is a good one. If you are interested in fashion, this is just a little bit more targeted approach for that. But at any rate, the thing that I want you to actually go to now that we need to talk about is this cost of doing business calculator. It's a link to another website, and if we go to that other website, this is what it looks like. And this is designed specifically for photography. So there's a lot about this part that is actually extremely good in here. And so we're going to go through this and take a quick peek at this. So if we start up here at the top, I would just want to explain a couple of things here because again, I know this website pretty well, and it's important that you guys realize there's two things about this that you need to realize. The first of this is that this really is designed or targeted more towards a photographer who is already in business. You guys are still, a semester or two away from that point, but you can still do this work keeping that part in mind. And the reason I say that is for a couple of things. So for instance, it's going to ask you to enter values in here that are relative to your where you currently are at. So again, most of you guys right now don't have an office or a studio. So what you need to do instead in this slot right in here, you simply need to put in your rent. This is what, say what? In this stuff, it's going to be annual. You can think about it differently, but this is going to be an annual rate. So again, if you say, for instance, the math is really easy. If you spend $1,000 a month in rent, then the figure you would put in here would be $12,000. So you guys get that whole part, right? So these are all annual figures here. If you do not understand what something is, see these little eyes that are right next to it? If you click on this, this will actually open it up for you, and it'll tell you what it is they're actually asking you to put in here. Again, the only real exception in here that I need you guys to be aware of is this first one. Instead of just your office and or studio, this should actually be your rent. But then you should really put in your true phone. If you've got a landline, I want somebody to take a picture of that landline and send it to me. My landline in my office rang today. It's only the second time in 5 years that that's happened. And I answered it, and it was somebody trying to sell me insurance. And I was like, really? So at any rate, you need to put that figure in here. For, again, your photography, visual, audio equipment. Now, this is one of the traps that a lot of people will get into. This is designed for you to actually, if you take a look at it, it's designed for you to think about, okay, are you going to buy a new camera? Are you going to buy a new camera this year? Whatever. What figure would really go into here? Now, in most of your cases, most of you guys, you buy a camera, and that's what you would work with for the next 3 or 4 years. So you can work these figures out. What I caution you against is this. Do not look at this thing and say, well, I'm not buying any camera gear this year, so I'm going to put a 0 in here. You are constantly buying gear. So you need to come up with some sort of figure to be realistic about this. Computer hardware, it's exactly the same thing. Are you in the market for a new computer? Well, you're not going to be buying a new computer every single year, but there is a cost associated with this. What is your web hosting service cost? What are your office supplies? What is professional development? This, again, if you don't know what this is, go in here and take a look at it. So this is actually going to be, again, if you went to a marketing consultant, if you want anything that's dealing with all of that. If you go through all of this stuff and put all of this stuff in, what it will ultimately do is pull together all of the cost of your expenses. However, it doesn't end there. In this part down here, the desired annual salary. And so what we need to do is, the distinction that we need to make is this. So we're going to try to come up with a figure here that deals with all the expenses that you have to live with. Now, some people would say that that's all I hope to have. I just hope to be breaking even this year. All I want, I've found out my expenses came to $55,000, so I want to make 55 grand. That's what I want to do. That is not aspirational. That is not going to get you anywhere. You guys need to think about, okay, I want to cover my expenses, but then I also want to make $1,000 a month on top of that. So your desired annual salary, this figure you put in here, is laid on top of all of your expenses. So this number right here is not the number that you want to cover all of these expenses. This number right down here is, what do you want to have after you've paid for everything? What do you want to say at the end of the year? Okay, I covered all of my rent, I bought new gear, I covered my computers, I traveled, I did all my internet shit, I did all my promotion. All of that is taken care of, and at the end of the day, I have 12 grand that I could put in the bank. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to get you guys. So, for me, looking at you, the suggestion that I would make to you, well, let's have this conversation. Your first year out of college with your photo degree, what do you want to have in the bank after you've paid for all of your expenses? Most of you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, most of you guys are just hoping you don't go into debt. Right? You're hoping to cover your expenses, and that alone would be like, okay, I would still argue, let's add just a little bit more of that. Would $500 a month on top of that be okay? So that puts this number in the $5,000 or $6,000 range. That wouldn't be overwhelmingly, and that will not skew your calculation here too much. But don't say, oh yeah, I expect to make 100 grand when I get out of here. That's simply unrealistic. Does that sort of make sense, everybody? So the figure that I would use if I was in your shoes, in this spot right here, again, I would put in probably 5 grand. That would be, if I could cover all of my expenses and make $5,000, that would be a good year, first year out of college. Then I could prove to my parents that I actually can make a living as a photographer. How many people in his room have had family question what are you going to do for a living, right?
The first thing my parents said when I told them I wanted to go to art school.
Oh, okay, well, that may have been better if the first thing I had just walked in my graduation. I'm literally standing in front of the stage in my little suit, and my father looks right at me and he goes, well, this is great. Now what are you going to do for a living? And that fucker, at that time I already had a job. I was already shooting for Playboy. I had a good gig going. Anyway. So that's what this is. The next thing over here, non-assignment income. What this would be is if you guys are making money on the side as a gambler. If you're running a dice program and you're making some there, whatever, blah, 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 you can actually add this part over here. For me, I would stay away from this in some way, unless, let's say you've got your mom, dad gave you, I don't know, a stock portfolio, and that's kicking off, whatever. That's what this is all about, non-assignment income. It would be income, stuff that you were making money, not doing photography, not even related to photography. You can add that figure in here. Personally, I would leave that a blank in my case, because I think that actually skews things. So in the end, if you put in these numbers and you are honest, and that's what you have to be about this, brutally honest, what it's going to do, I'm going to get to the number of days in just a second. What it will do is, as you continue to scroll down, it will give you this, and this is what I'm going to ask you guys to turn in. So you can see, if I don't touch any of the numbers in there that exist in here, and those numbers that are in here, they actually say are what they feel like is an average for a photographer who's probably been in the game 5 to 10 years. So those numbers are not just something that they've pulled out of air. So that's what's going on here. That the total annual expenses came to basically 90 grand. They talk here about the week of cost of doing business. All they've done is they've divided this by 52 to get this weekly cost right here. And then the overhead for each assignment. What do you need to really charge every single assignment that you do. Now, this was based on the calculation when they set up here at the top that they thought that they could work 100 days out of the year. So if you take a look, you put in here the number of days that you think that you can bill for a year, and they've put in 100 right here. And so they simply took this annual cost, and this includes your salary, divided it by 100, and they came up with this figure right here. Does that make sense to everyone? What's going on here? So, the first thing about doing this calculator is you got to be honest. The second thing, and it's the thing that we're going to get to right now, and it'll be the last thing that we do, and we'll call it a day here, guys. How can you figure out the number of days you can bill? So this is going to be on the whiteboard. You won't see this, but we're going to go through it really quickly. So I'm going to tell you how you figure that out. As a photographer, now this is not as a photo assistant or a digital tech, which is again where I personally think that you guys should have your sights set, but I'm going to do it anyway. So here's the deal. For every day that you can bill, you have a prep day and a post day for every one of your shoot days. So when you talk about your number of shoot days, your billable days, it's not 1, it's 3. Every day that you shoot and every day that you can bill, because you bill for your shooting days, every single one of those also is going to involve a day of prep and a day of post. And so what that really means is that if we actually look at the shooting days or billing days, so that's what I'm going to put here, actual days over here. And we're going to start with 100 right there, because that's what they say right here. So if I have 100 shooting days, days that I can actually bill for, again, that means I am doing 300 days out of the year. This is how many days I'm actually working, because for every one of these 100 days that I could actually bill for, I've got a prep day and a post day tacked on top of it. Make sense? So this starts to be the reality. If I'm billing, so this would actually be considered really good. If I do 120 days, that ends up 360 days that I'm actually working. That is divorce. Because I'm working, I'm taking 5 days off the entire year. I'm working the other 360 days out of the year. My wife has left me, my kids, I don't have kids. If I had kids, my kids would have left me. If I had a cute little dog, he would have left me. The plants would all be dead. Everything, right? So if we go in the other direction, 80 days turns out to be 80 billing days, turns out to be 240 days actually of work. That's a typical year. That's basically what most of you guys do if you've got a full-time job. Right? What's a full-time job? It's 5 days a week times 50 weeks, 250 days. That's basically working Monday through Friday with 2 weeks off sometime during the year is a 250-week work week. So 80 days here is actually average and really good. So this isn't bad here. So we're going to call this guy good. Not real good, but good. 60 days is turning out to be 180 days out of the year that you're actually working. This starts to be less good. And then finally, 40 days means you're actually working 120 days. You're working a third of the year. 40 days, you are on the fence. Iffy. I'm going to be kind about that. Does this make sense to everyone? What's going on here? So, I have done this calculation. I don't want to skew you guys, but it's all over the place. I've had people come in as low as $30,000 for the year. I've had people come in as high as $150,000 a year. The truth of it is, most of you, I'm just going to throw this out there, most of you guys land somewhere in the $50,000 to $60,000 a year range. That's where things typically land. Now, again, Don't let that skew you. I want you to put in your real numbers because this is important to you. Are we good on this part? So here is the math. If we do it, I'm going to keep it at $50,000 just because it makes it easy to do the math. If we actually say that, okay, I'm going to make $50,000 in a year, and I'm working, I can actually bill for 100 days of that. What do I need to charge? What is my base to make this 50 grand? It's simple, $50,000 divided by 100. You have got to bill $500 a day. That's your minimum, or you cannot make a living. If you bill less than $500 a day, you don't make your $50,000, you lose money, you go out of business. It's that simple. Is there anything complicated about this? The irony of this is, as you actually work more, you can charge less. Because at 120 days, can somebody do the math really quickly? At 100, I can do it really quickly. 50,000 divided by 120.
Wouldn't the goal be to go in the opposite direction, to work less and charge more?
Yeah, exactly. You would only need to make $416 a day. However, if you are working 40 days out of the year, you've got to make $1,200 a day to make your $1,250 a day to make your nut. Does this make sense? So you have to do this calculation. That's one of the assignments here. You've actually got to do this calculation to find out your base. But if you cannot make this base, you're screwed. So, bad news. Because right now everybody's going to get that part. Here's the good news. This is as a photographer. That's not what we are talking about with you guys coming straight out of the gate. You guys coming straight out of the gate thinking about an assistant or a digital tech job should be able to at least hope for or try to aim for whatever 3 days a week as a digital tech working for somebody else. I'm just going to guess 3 days a week, right? I don't see that as being onerous, right? Times 50 weeks, that's $150. Can somebody who has a calculator really quickly come up with that $150? So I'm going to do my 50,000 again. That way, at this right here, if you can bill 150 days as a digital tech, you need to make $333. That's what your day rate needs to be.
Aren't your expenses going to be a lot lower if you're a digital tech rather than a photographer? 'Cause your overhead would, you don't need the same kind of.
I don't really see. The only difference is going to be in the gear you're buying.
Okay, like if we're not renting our own like studios and things like that.
Yeah, no, but again, you're putting in your cost for your rent.
Yeah.
And for me, when I'm in New York, all the studio rentals are all passed on to the client. I don't rent anything for myself. Is it making sense to this? If you are 200 days out of the year, then your day rate is $250 a year, and you can actually make that nut. Is that possible? That's 4 days a week times 50 weeks. That is ambition. That is a goal. Where does that fall into your goals that we were talking about earlier? Is it conceivable that this is a 1-year goal, that I'm going to get a job working at least 200 days out of the year, and $250, I can make my 50 grand and I can stay in photography? Would that be a reasonable 1-year goal? This is not where you want to end your life. This is not the 10-year plan. But this could easily be a 1-year plan, right? Maybe a 2-year plan. Is this making sense to you guys? But you've got to know. So when somebody comes to you and says, okay, I need an assistant for the day, I'll give you $125, you say to them, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Do you turn down work?
Well, that's my question. Isn't it better to take the lower paying jobs that way you still have an income versus not working?
What I can say to you is this. There are things that are of value that people can offer you. Like, I'm going to tangent here really quickly, like a credit line. That could be a very normal thing. So let's say, for instance, I got offered to shoot a cover for Vogue. What would that do for my career is huge, right? And if they said to me, we won't pay you anything, I would still do it, right? Because of the value of that, right? But at a certain stage of the game, I can't eat the value. I can't go to the grocery store and buy something to eat because I've got this great credit, right? So the money part does become a serious issue in this, right? The other thing is, so now back to your question is, the inherent value saying no. So this is the hardest, this is going to be, there's a lot of hard lessons, and this is this is the perfect thing to end this on. So, I shouldn't name names, but I'm gonna. This is gonna bite me in the ass. This shit always does. Maybe I'm not gonna name names, but okay, so I was bidding a job for General Motors for an annual report. Now I had at one time I've had more agents than I ever should have. But at any rate, this particular agent that I had at this particular time, she was horrible at getting new business, but she was the single best negotiator I've ever seen in my life ever. She could out negotiate anybody and anything. I mean, she was like there was something evil about her being able to do it this well. No, she's still a really good friend of mine, but it was just like, I would just watch her, and it was fucking magic. It was just magic. And this is the lesson that she taught me. So this art director calls her up and he says, I'm interested in hiring Verser to shoot this GM project. It's a 10-day booking. I need you to do an estimate for this. And she goes, okay, fine. I'll get it to you, the next day, whatever. So she calls me up. We spent all this time going through it. And she says, so what do you think your creative fee should be on this? And I was talking to her and I was like, and we went back and forth, whatever. And then we decided, and this is now in the 90s sometime, $3,500 a day. That's a $35,000 job. All the expenses are on top of that. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. Let's go with that, whatever. So she emails in the estimate, whatever, and the art director calls her and he says, Versus come in at $3,500 a day. And she goes, yep. And he goes, do you have any idea so-and-so and so-and-so will do this for $2,500 a day? I'm just going to say it. Sandra will do this for $2,500 a day. And my agent said to him flat out, didn't skip a beat. She goes, well, that's great. Then you should hire Sandra to do that and enjoy it. And it got ready to hang up. And he was like, wait a minute. No, wait, we can talk. Ask yourself this. When you go shopping for something, right? Do you always want the cheapest thing? No. Do you always want the most expensive thing? You do, but that's not always what you buy. What do you usually buy? Something in the middle. That's what everybody does. Psychology happens in all of it. It happens in every business in the world that there is. And so what happened with her, the way she had actually played this thing out was the minute she said to him, no, you can't have Verser, guess what he was desperate to have? Verser. And I got the job and shot the job, and there you go.
For the price that...
Oh, for the price we quoted. No, you never go down on your rate, ever. We'll talk about that when we get to estimating. I'll do many, many other things, but I will not cut my rate.
This is just me creating scenarios in my head that would want to make you cut your rate. Like, I would just create more scenarios, like more jobs.
Oh, that doesn't mean I can't cut
I already know you create.
No, it doesn't mean that I can't cut the overall price, but if you're going to ask to pay me less, then I'm going to give you less work, and I'm fine with that. So you want to pay me half of that? Fine, I'll give you half that work. I'm okay with that. Does this make sense where we're beginning to go with this? So, again, what can you do in this to actually satisfy this part in one last minute? Is, again, this is where all the other things that we have been talking about here, this is where networking skills come in. This is where knowing people comes in. This is where Jen did a whole series of jobs this summer, actually established a good number of connections, people that other things that she was working for, whatever. She is now worth more today than she was before the beginning of the summer because of that experience, because of who she knows, of the experience she had from that, what she can bring to that. Is she going to be better off working for me as a digital tech than somebody who's never digital teched? Of course she is. So she's worth more. Right? So that then becomes your job, is convincing the people who are doing this that you are worth the money that they're actually paying you to do this. Or, again, you think that, so I come to you and I say, Michaela, will you actually digital tech for me? And you say, sure, I'd love to. And I'll say, well, what's your rate? And you say, $350 for a day. And I say, I've only got $175. And you look at me and say, well, then can we do the job in 4 hours? Ulrich, that goes to what you were saying right there, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. You stick by your rate, but you just say, okay, fine, I am wanting to work with you. I'm willing to work with you. I will do that. But do not look at me and say, okay, well, your rate is $350. We're just going to cut that in half. No, that's not what you need for a living. That's not what you're worth. So what other compromise can we come up with to actually make this happen? Are we good on this part? Okay, we're going to get much, much deeper into this stuff, guys, than we got today, but at least we sort of got a jumping off point. Do you have enough information? Do you feel like that you can actually go through that calculator now and make an honest input? All right, again, I'm not going to change the due dates for this. This isn't going to be due next week. It'll be due, I think it's the week after, whatever the website says is that. So anyway, all of those resources are actually on our website, so please go check that part out. Don't get too much deeper into thinking about cost and especially day rates. We are not going to ever work with day rates in this class, so don't take this too much further yet, okay? And I'll see you guys next week.